All right, welcome back to the webinar series, one last time in 2020. You know, between people shifting to working from home, to kids schooling from home, to the impending holidays, you might feel like you're herding cats lately. And if you feel that way, then I hope you celebrated Cat Herders Day yesterday. Or maybe you rewarded yourself with a cupcake because it was also National Cupcake Day yesterday. I can assure you I did celebrate the latter observation. But we're not here to talk about cats or cupcakes. We're here to talk about other C words like cognition and construction, as in COGNITIONSmart data and Green Builder Media's special report on the state of the construction industry. COVID-19 turned a lot of things upside down this year, and the building industry is no exception. It enhanced digitization, expedited the adoption of a wide spectrum of technologies, created new efficiencies, and crowned millennials as the top industry influencers. Here to deliver the State of the Construction Industry address is Sara Gutterman. Now, in case you are unfamiliar with Sara, she is the co-founder and CEO of Green Builder Media. Sara has established a reputation as a visionary thought leader and passionate advocate for sustainability, and she works closely with a diverse group of stakeholders in the building industry to develop impactful, long-term green strategies that are simultaneously sustainable and profitable. Sara is a former venture capitalist and graduated cum laude from Dartmouth College and holds an MBA in entrepreneurship and finance from the University of Colorado. Along with her husband and my friend, Ron Jones, she resides in Lake City, Colorado, where she is a county commissioner, as well as an avid long-distance runner, snowboarder, and CrossFit trainer. Now, today's webinar is brought to you by Carrier. Founded by the inventor of modern air conditioning in 1902, Carrier is a world leader in high technology heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration solutions. Carrier experts provide sustainable solutions, integrating energy efficient products, building controls, and energy services for residential, commercial, retail, transport, and food service customers. Carrier is part of Carrier Global Corporation, a leading global provider of healthy, safe, and sustainable building and cold chain solutions. Now, our other sponsor today is TimberTech. TimberTech's boards are engineered with better technology. That means their decking looks more like real wood than any other composite, resists scratches and stains, and is easy to maintain. And because they don't need to thoughtlessly cut down trees to make it, their decking keeps the planet beautiful too. Beauty, durability, and sustainability in one package doesn't get much better than that. During the course of today's presentation, you can submit questions for Sara. Simply use that questions box inside the GoToWebinar control panel. It's probably located on the right side of your screen. I'll review those questions and pose them to her during the Q&A time set aside after her presentation. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's always such a pleasure to be here with you and our wizard behind the scenes, Mary Kessner, our production manager, who's running the technology. Thank you so much to Mary. And thank you all so much for being here today. It's so much fun for me to be able to deliver cognition, insights, and Green Builder Media research to you all, to our audience. I see that there's a handful of you attending today who attended the webinar I did 2 weeks ago on healthy home trends and some of my recent presentations. You'll see there's a lot of new information, a little bit of crossover between some of the past presentations I've done over the last 4 to 6 weeks, but for the most part, a lot of new information to go over today. I have many, many, many slides. We'll try to run through this in a reasonable amount of time, so we have plenty of time for questions at the end. For those of you who are not familiar with cognition, let me just give you a little bit of context. So I'll first start with Green Builder Media. We are North America's leading media company focused on green building and sustainable living. We do a lot of different things, of course, starting with our media and communications channels. We have a flagship publication, Green Builder Magazine. We just found out that we won Best Trade Publication for the 8th year in a row from NARI, which we're really happy about. Lots of digital media. I really suggest you sign up for our Vantage weekly e-newsletter. We've got lots of social media and RSS feeds and ways to get our wonderful information that our fantastic editors generate every day out to you. We also do demonstration projects called our Vision House series. I think we have 5 projects going on right now. We're just about to release our 17th project in our Vision House series. We also do events, live events when we can, although all virtual right now in the era of COVID. We will be doing a Sustainability Symposium 21. That's our annual thought leadership event. It'll be at the end of the first quarter, I believe the first week in March. We're just finalizing the date. It will be virtual, of course. We invite you all to attend that. And then last but certainly not least, we have COGNITIONSmart data. And this is our suite of market intelligence and data services. We collect data through a couple of different data sets. The first is a proprietary technology platform that utilizes artificial intelligence to mine web and social media content using contextual filters and parameters that we've taught to that platform. So we can look at macro trends, we can look at micro audiences and geographies. We can really zero in on topics like net zero and healthy home and resiliency and the things that are really near and dear to our heart in terms of content and topic areas. We can then port in our second data set from our audience, which is a hybrid trade and consumer audience, early adopters and first movers. And so when we engage with our audience and ask survey questions and gather metadata, it's kind of like having a crystal ball because it's really where the leading edge of the market is today and indicative of where the mainstream is heading in the next 6, 12, 24 months. And then the third data set that we port in is market growth data. So today, without any further ado, I'm going to give you our state of the building industry. A lot of this information is also in our November, December issue of Green Builder magazine, which you can access online at greenbuildermedia.com. Just go to the nav bar that says magazine and go to current issue, and you can see the digital version of that. Last, before I dive into things, I want to reiterate what Mike said, which is a wholehearted thank you to our sponsors today, Carrier and TimberTech. Both of these companies have been great supporters and wonderful partners. Carrier, I'll give a call out to them because they just came out with a whole home air filtration system that gets rid of about 98% of COVID particles, which I know is all, kind of top of mind and one of the hottest in demand technologies right now. And then I'll also give a really big shout out to TimberTech. They have taken composite deck recycling to a whole new level with their recycling program. I encourage you to go to their website and check it out. But they do just a superb job of gathering plastics and recycling them into composite decking, which obviously it's just paramount that we get our arms around and tackle our plastics problem. And we have all kinds of content about that topic on our website, and ocean plastics is just an exploding problem that we need to address. And companies like TimberTech and their decking brand AZEK are really addressing that head on. So thanks to both of those pioneering companies. Now, without further ado, I'm going to start off with a housing market outlook, looking at where we are today and then factors that are driving the housing market and the remodeling sector. So the good news is housing remains the bright spot of the economy. Home sales continue to be strong, inventory is limited, prices are high and stable, and mortgage rates remain very low. So through the end of 2020, and really it's projected into the first half of 2021, home sales and home prices are expected to remain solid and high. Inventory is, again, really at an all-time low. Prices have reached an all-time high, with the median existing single-family home price at about $317,000. And we're at a little over 1 million, 1.02 million adjusted annual rate starts through the third quarter of 2020. again, which is just a good, solid market. And really, because that inventory is so tight, it's a seller's market. So that's good news for sellers. Not so good news for buyers, because what we've heard is that in a lot of markets, and particularly kind of the hotter secondary and tertiary markets, not those dense urban markets that used to really be the most competitive, but in some of those secondary and tertiary ones, we're hearing that there's a lot of competitive offers where buyers trying to purchase homes either are kind of getting bid out of those homes, or the homes just, get sold and are off the market before they can even put in a bid. And as I mentioned, as we follow our housing economists on our team and also throughout the industry, it's projected that momentum for the housing market will continue to build into the first half of 2021, but probably slow down in the second half of 2021. The nice part is that it's not just new home construction and sales, the remodeling and the retrofit and the existing home market is also soaring. And so depending on who you ask, through our cognition data, we're looking at about a 75% increase in remodeling projects. That's both contractor-based and DIY, as well as an increase in the amount that has been spent, up from about $12,000 to a little over $17,000 on remodeling projects. And it's really millennials who are leading the charge. It used to really be Gen Xers that were leading the charge with respect to spending the most on remodeling and retrofitting projects. But right now in this downturn, Gen Xers have been more on the sidelines than millennials, who are hitting their peak home buying potential. I'll talk a lot more about millennials later. And then boomers, who are remodeling and retrofitting their homes so that they can stay in their homes longer, age in place, and they're retrofitting their homes with assisted living technology so they do not have to go to assisted living facilities. And we're seeing that over half of the remodeling projects actually increase home performance and sustainability. You can see over on the right-hand side of the screen some of the kind of eco-friendly or sustainable projects that have been implemented this year. Lots of on-site power generation, really to address self-sufficiency as well. And that is partly because of COVID, but also because of wildfires and other things that are going to bring energy costs down and increase indoor air quality. We're also seeing a spike in outdoor living, or what I'm going to call a little later alfresco living projects, big upturn in those as well. Again, just like with the housing sector, momentum for remodeling does not appear to be slowing, with 3/4 of the market of homeowners indicating that they are planning to undergo at least one additional home improvement project this year. Here's just a quick view at some of the trending projects: interior projects, exterior projects, technology, and green, specific green remodeling projects. The factors that are driving housing market growth, of course, begin with interest rates. So they're at about 2.65, incredibly low. Solid demand, increased desire by consumers to invest in long-term assets that appreciate, like homes, and really focusing spending on essentials. So, of course, folks are spending money on travel and eating out into upgrading their homes or investing in new homes. Factors that are limiting housing market growth include lumber prices that were at all-time highs, came down a little bit, but are rising again. Material shortages, again, this was really plaguing the market, in kind of the second and third quarters of this year. It's getting a little bit better in certain categories, but still projected to continue to be an issue into 2021. Labor issues, of course, the slow employment and economic recovery and fairly low consumer confidence. Obviously, the unknown status of government stimulus funding, hopefully that will go away soon as Congress makes a decision and hopefully reaches an agreement. But one thing that we're really keeping our eye on is foreclosures. Because of the moratorium on foreclosures this year, there's actually a lag in foreclosures. And so it's probable that by middle of next year, we're going to start seeing some of these foreclosures that probably should have, happened, well, now really, kind of start flooding into the market, which may affect demand and impact prices. Some just other notable trends we're keeping our eye on. Our builder and developer audiences tell us that they are seeking larger lines of credit than in past years. The good news is these loans are actually based on pre-sales as opposed to spec projects, which reduces risk all around. It allows builders and developers to access a lower cost of capital. And I just feel like there's an active lending time right now. We're also seeing builders and developers expand their portfolios from single family homes to townhomes that do offer a little bit more of an affordable price point. We are still seeing increases in the build to rent community space, but mostly we're seeing a lot of amenity-based communities that are really emphasizing connection with nature, which has become extremely important in the era of COVID with things like walking trails and community gardens. And then virtual sales. About a quarter of respondents from a recent National Association of Realtor survey said that they would be willing to buy a home sight unseen, which is just incredible to me. And that number goes up to about 30% with millennials and older Gen Zs. But really the bulk of home research right now is online more so than ever before. And this is kind of shifting the way that builders and manufacturers, but particularly builders, are communicating with home buyers. The good news is that numbers really pencil out for home ownership. It actually is about $300 less expensive right now to own a home than to rent when you compare the monthly median national rental cost versus the cost for kind of the medium national mortgage. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not the denser, higher priced urban markets that are really seeing that uptick in growth. It's more moderate markets where home buyers can buy, kind of more home for their buck and yards and rooms to move. And of course, all of this has been facilitated by that rapid uptick in remote working and telecommunications. I say this a lot, but it's really interesting now because home buyers and homeowners can really live where they want to live and work where they want to live, as opposed to the model that we've pursued forever, which is we need to live where we work and then we travel to play. But now we can live where we want to play and just work there too. I know I certainly do. I'm in the middle of, the least populated county in the lower 48 in the San Juan Mountains in Colorado. And you live here because you want to play here, not because of much else. And again, housing demand, the numbers are just absolutely clear. We are shifting from the larger metro urban cores to medium density kind of inner suburbs, and then even lighter density outer suburbs, and into even rural areas. Lots of growth in the Mountain West, particularly along the wildland urban interface, or the WUI, which kind of brings a whole different set of, kind of building needs with respect to resiliency and high performance at high altitudes. So different building science, and again, kind of building demand for, not just climate zone, but wildfire risk mitigation. And then we're definitely seeing, kind of national averages for home and lot sizes decrease. Certainly, we've moved far away from McMansions, and, a lot of home buyers today, especially the millennials, are looking for compact floor plans that are super efficient, where they don't have to spend a lot of money, heating and cooling and maintaining those floor plans. So while we're kind of on the topic of high performance homes and building science, I'm going to talk about a couple of the challenges that I mentioned earlier that are really impacting the housing sector. And we'll start with soaring lumber costs. As I mentioned earlier, in September-ish, lumber costs were at just all-time highs. That moderated a little bit in October, November, but those prices are going up again. And it's estimated, the reason why this is important is that it's estimated that that increase in lumber costs have at their highest point increased the cost of a typical American home by about $16,000, which then prices out, about 2.1 million households out of homes with respect to affordability and being able to qualify for mortgages. So there is a direct impact between lumber costs and the amount of people that can qualify for homes that desirable homes. The good news is that some of the Canadian lumber tariffs are going to be decreasing, which will hopefully put a downward push on those lumber costs. I mentioned impending material shortages. We're tracking online a growing negative sentiment and anxiety among builders and developers with respect to material shortages. So while a couple of months ago, especially in categories like HVAC and appliances, material shortages were really extreme. And what was happening was that builders couldn't get these products, manufacturers, because of COVID shutdowns, they were back ordered and they just could not fulfill demand because, they were trying to kind of keep up with that demand that was really growing because the housing industry, because, it was so hot. And so there was a lag. That, as I said, has mitigated a little bit, but really not enough to fully appease the concerns that builders have, because what's happened is that construction schedules have been disrupted as products have been backlogged and back ordered. And so it's really important more than ever now for builders and building professionals to really plan ahead because these material shortages are definitely projected into the first half of 2021. So it's really important that builders make sure that they build enough cushion into their construction schedules and into their ordering plans accordingly. Labor shortages, according to a builder survey that we actually just have ongoing, about 60% of builders and building professional firms are struggling with labor shortages and lack of access to skilled labor in particular. This has been a problem for years within the building industry. It's not a COVID-driven issue, but it has certainly continued in the era of COVID. And so what we're finding is, and then the other part of labor issues is that it's, we have an aging workforce here in the building industry. And so building professional firms as well as manufacturers have had to become really creative with respect to recruiting younger Millennial and Gen Z workers. And the way that firms are doing that is by providing flexible hours and performance-based pay, flexible family time. That really flexibility has actually turned out to be one of the most desirable things, again, as we survey both building professional firms as well as the folks they're trying to hire in terms of Millennials and Gen Zs, who, this is a generation, they like their flexibility. They like to, kind of show up when they want to show up and, stop when they want to stop. They'll get the work done. They're hard workers, no doubt. But, they do like that flexibility. So because we're seeing, lumber costs, material shortages, and labor issues, really continue to be exacerbated throughout the era of COVID, what we're seeing is that all of this is driving towards an uptick in what we used to call alternative building envelope systems. And I put that in quotes because, you know, what is once alternative becomes mainstream, and then just common sense, like energy efficiency, you know, really kind of became common sense in the 2008 recession. So we're really seeing a big movement towards interest in and some adoption of some of these systems like insulated concrete forms and structural insulated panels, partly because they're actually becoming cost effective, right? So one of our builder colleagues who's actually working with us on our Vision House Seattle Cascades project that we're doing with C.R. Harrow, VP of Innovation at Meritage Homes. The builder contractor is a gentleman named Ted Clifton. He builds all of his homes with structural insulated panels, huge advocate. And basically what he says to us is that he says, hey, I can build 6 homes for the price and in the time frame that my colleagues who are still, you know, stick framing can build 5 homes in. And so it's a much better value proposition with respect to, you know, dollars spent, time spent, performance, and you know, just kind of ease of installation, quality control, all of these things. We're also starting to see a little bit in the area of vacuum insulated panels. This is an innovative technology we're keeping our eye on. In addition to alternative building systems, we're also seeing an uptick in panelization and wall assemblies, primarily because of the quality control, or quality installation inspection, QII, which is now required in California. So with panelized wall systems, as well as with prefab and modular, which I'll get to in the next slide, because all of these systems are built in a factory, you really can address on-site quality control, the labor issues, you know, installation of insulation and windows and other elements of the building envelope system to ensure for higher performance, which obviously impacts, you know, building science, the cost of home ownership, all of these different elements to make these panelization and wall systems more desirable right now. And there's a spectrum of different systems that are being offered. You know, some of them just have, you know, very basic elements. Others have more kind of finishes on food, electrical and plumbing and fenestration. And so there's different options available. And then of course, the last component of kind of this part of the conversation is modular, prefab, and a little bit of 3D printing, although we're not seeing huge gains in adoption for 3D printing yet. I do think it's coming, but you know, modular and prefab homes in particular, you know, and multifamily, you know, we're really starting to see this area take off, and it's partly because of, you know, the fact, again, quality control, performance management, on-site labor issues, you know, all of these things are getting streamlined. And now there are companies like one that we're partnering with called Devel. We're actually launching a Green Builder branded version of a Devel home, which is going to be, you know, 100% solar powered, electric, intelligent, super healthy, high performance. You know, it's got all of the boxes that we would need to check as Green Builder Media to uphold our values. And fortunately, Devel, you know, already has a product out there that checks all of these boxes, and we're just enhancing it. But what we're seeing is that, you know, the bottleneck in prefab was not so much the manufacturing, but really kind of streamlining the whole process from ordering a home through to manufacturing, delivery, but really the installation on site. And so we're working with Devel to solve for that, and it's really kind of a brave new world and very exciting. The other thing that we're finding is that with prefab, in a lot of cases, prefab homes like Blue Homes, which actually Devel purchased, was a pioneer in the prefab space. And they basically built space shuttles for Silicon Valley tech entrepreneurs, right? They were $1 or $2 million homes, beautiful, high performance, spectacular, but very, very expensive and not really affordable. But what we're finding is that, one, kind of the price per square foot is coming down for prefab. So instead of a space shuttle, it's a Tesla. But also what we're finding is that more and more homeowners are willing to invest in a higher price per square foot right now, because they're willing to invest in performance and health and wellness and connected living and all of these things that are coming with these prefab homes that might be a little bit higher priced up front, but certainly yield a lower long-term life cycle cost and decrease the total cost of ownership. So again, kind of riffing on the home performance and energy efficiency theme, we could not have a state of the construction industry conversation without talking about the net zero imperative, the transition to zero. It's really incredible to see what's happening with respect to net zero. Certainly, COVID has increased awareness about comfort and efficiency and cost savings in our homes, but that was already happening. I really think the 2008 recession was the turning point for energy efficiency, because everybody became super cognizant of their energy bills then. And so we're really seeing the market for net zero energy structures explode. And that's because of a combination of increase in efficiency and price parity for renewable energy, namely solar, for advanced innovative technologies like heat pump technology for heating and cooling, water heaters and dryers, induction cooktops, smart thermostats, and other connected living technologies, super high performance windows and insulation and other building envelope systems, neat window technologies like electrochromic glass that change their transparency. They change from transparent to translucent to opaque as the sun shines on it. And we're actually starting to see some even more incredible glazing technologies that harvest solar power and can just do some pretty incredible things. Lots of advances in cool roof technologies with radiant coatings that reflect sunshine off of the roof to repel solar heat gain. Electric vehicle straight to grid technologies, which is pretty interesting, to serve as backup batteries and to address the demand side energy management equation. And then other really cool technologies, I put hydro panels on there. There are some new panels that basically act as solar panels, but they also harvest clean water. So imagine that in rural areas, in third world countries, and really anywhere these days, given our urgent water needs, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I'm on the board of Team Zero, which recently merged with EBA, and Team Zero is about to come out with its next biannual, every other year inventory, and you will know, and these are brand new numbers to me, the number of net zero residential structures kind of through 2020 at this point is a little under 28,000 projects in the US and Canada. About 75% of those are multifamily. And just the growth in net zero and net zero energy ready homes is tremendous. And so we're tracking these numbers. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides, but just want to point out that beyond getting to net zero in any given single family home or multifamily project, what we're starting to see to drive the net zero wave on a much larger scale is adoption of microgrids at a community scale to look at how to make an entire community net zero, as opposed to just single family home where you're optimizing energy management within the dwelling units in that community before energy even hits the grid. We're seeing a transition to full electrification, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then keep your eye on net zero carbon buildings, right? So it's not just net zero energy, but it's full net zero carbon. This is a whole burgeoning area that I won't get into too much detail into, but we do have a lot of content on our website about what net zero carbon is, because it's here and it is definitely the next big thing. We see, net zero homes they don't necessarily, but they can be a little bit more, in terms of upfront cost, but they yield such a compelling annualized ROI that basically when you run the numbers these days, it's just a no-brainer. And, because you're basically, you've got a short payback period and then you're making money after that. It's like taking candy from a baby, right? So you can see numbers here in terms of, net zero energy homes versus net zero positive, net zero energy ready. Lots of growth in the net zero energy homes, which is really always good to see. And, on the bottom right, the benefits of living in a net zero home, they've just, again, become proven and pretty much a no-brainer. So they're very easy to articulate for building professionals at this point and to understand for consumers. We are seeing net zero across, the housing stock. Builders are really picking this up and pushing it. Cities, states, nations, 77 countries have committed to net zero emissions by 2050. As we track conversation online, advocates for net zero homes and just net zero in general really believe that there's no time to waste and we've got to just act as bullishly and aggressively right now as we can. Critics, of course, are worried about stringent government policy and government oversight and high costs. Fortunately, a lot of those critics are changing their minds, as the numbers pencil out and as the value proposition becomes more understandable. When we survey our consumers, they get the payback and the economic benefit and ultimate cost savings of net zero energy homes. They also like the fact that they can reduce their emissions. And of course, indoor air quality continues to be an exploding area. And you can see on the right-hand side that the DOE's Zero Energy Ready Home Program is kind of the program that our builder audience is most familiar with. But interest and awareness for those other programs is increasing as well. So we're, to kind of augment the net zero conversation, we are also seeing a marked shift in electrification. In fact, Oakland just became the 40th municipality to create a net zero an all-electric mandate in California. So over 40 municipalities now in California have committed to all electric or to shift to electrification. And we're seeing this not just in California, but across the country from coast to coast, along the West Coast, of course, into Oregon and Washington, into Colorado, all the way into Massachusetts and New Jersey and New York, down to Louisiana. And, we're seeing kind of a perfect storm of product innovation in some of those areas I mentioned earlier, of course, with solar being of paramount importance, heat pump technology, induction cooktops, et cetera, that really help to facilitate electric homes and electrification at a reasonable cost. And we're also seeing that full electrification ultimately can save homeowners money on utility bills and, can certainly improve indoor air quality. So this is a fun little graphic. I just put it in here. It's in the September-October issue of Green Builder magazine, which is dedicated to the net zero imperative and electrification. There's lots of content. Again, go to greenbuildermedia.com and go under the nav bar under magazine and check out the September-October issue. And you can see, again, our suggestions for how you get to, full electrification with that blend of on-site power generation, heat pump technology, induction cooktops, smart thermostats, and other connected living technologies, water heaters, advanced water heaters, et cetera. So what we are also seeing with electrification is not only projected market growth, which is explosive, from 2.4 billion in 2020 to about 12.9 billion in 2029, which really includes demand for these advanced technologies that I've mentioned, and projected cost and performance metrics across all climate zones. It used to be that heat pump technology is one of the arguments against heat pumps was that the technology for HVAC and water heating and dryers was that they couldn't perform as well in extreme climates, hot or cold. But that's really that with advances in heat pump technology, that has gone away. And heat pumps can really perform very well in extreme temperatures. And so I think, that helps solve for some of the challenges that we were seeing with the shift to full electrification, but not just from a market growth and performance standpoint, but also in terms of our global impact and our environmental impact. The shift to electrification, there's a great argument for why we should do this with respect to the environmental impact and decreasing our footprint. By taking away the, estimated 560 million tons of CO2 that we burn through using natural gas in homes. And then, of course, the impact on indoor air quality as well. I've talked a lot about heat pump technology just because it plays a really important role in getting to zero and full electrification. And really just what I want to point out here is that there's an increased interest from consumers. You can see a survey where we asked our consumer audience, and again, keep in mind, these are early adopters and first movers, but they know what heat pump technology is and they want it in their homes, and they really want it because of cost savings and energy efficiency. Historically, there's been some challenges to adoption for some of these advanced technologies like cost and installation, just general lack of familiarity and availability. But again, we're really seeing a lot of those problems being dissolved with the innovative technology themselves, and then enhanced training and education and availability. I've heard from a lot of folks that they kind of call the 2021 code a net zero code. There's been a lot of movement towards net zero. I don't know that I'd call it a full net zero code, but I think certainly we might get there and, closer to it in 2024. I do hear that with respect to the 2021 code, there are some concerns about kind of training and education and really just getting builders up to speed so that they can meet the code with the proper building science knowledge. And so, there may be a little bit of a gap between where builders are today and where they need to be to really help get to the goals and objectives set by the 2021 code. But I am fully confident that we will get there as an industry in terms of getting to a net zero code and providing proper education. To that end, I'll give a shameless plug to a builder and building professional program that we're launching in conjunction with Sam Rashkin, who's really one of the fathers of the Energy Star program, called Housing 2.0. Again, if you want to go to our website at greenbuildermedia.com and click on the Housing 2.0 program microsite, you can learn more about that program. It's a really comprehensive builder training and education program. And of course, not just for builders, but designers and architects and code officials and energy raters, looking at how we can design and build the next generation of housing. So that's certainly, looking at not just building to code, but far beyond that. Again, since we're talking about the state of the building industry, we just couldn't have a conversation without really understanding the impact of COVID, which has forced homeowners and consumers to reprioritize really all aspects of their lives. But with respect to their homes, our homes, we were told for so long, this whole year really, that our homes are the safest place to be. And so I think we've reconnected with our homes and have a new kind of sense of belonging and peace of mind when we are home than anywhere else. We are also seeing, again, reprioritization with respect to enhanced desire for that connection with nature, with outdoor living, with lawns, with growing our own food. We're also seeing that consumers and home buyers that might have, kind of turned their noses up at older homes, really because of tight inventory, and in some cases they don't really have a choice. They're opting for more dated homes that are fixer-uppers that they need to invest in, but we're seeing, kind of a greater adoption of dated than we had in the past. And then I mentioned this a little earlier, but we're really seeing that consumers are really investing in those long-term appreciable assets like homes right now. And they're stepping a little bit away from just making decisions based on lowest upfront cost or price per square foot to something that, to a metric, frankly, a more relevant metric that includes quality and sustainability and performance and health and wellness. So with respect to, what homeowners want, certainly health and wellness, indoor air quality is top of mind given, the concerns of COVID. We're seeing enhanced demand for connected living, resiliency and self-sufficiency in two areas, really on-site power production and on-site food production. And then outdoor living, as I mentioned earlier, is burgeoning. So I'll talk about all these in a minute. Let me just share a little bit of information about again, it's an ongoing survey that we have in play right now. We're just asking our readers how they're doing, right? How has COVID affected them? And fortunately, the majority are just reporting that they're fine. It's tough, but we're getting through day by day. And then the next largest group says that they're good and that they're safe and they're healthy and their businesses are thriving. And so that's good news to us. The biggest concern for our readers right now is keeping themselves and their families healthy, followed, a distant second, paying their bills and, finding meaningful work. In terms of, this one's interesting to me, their top global risk of highest concern is failure to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So that's more so than coronavirus or economic instability or social instability. So I think that clearly climate action is top of mind for folks. Health and indoor air quality is the category that our readers believe will be most impacted by COVID. So I keep talking about how the 2008 recession was good for energy efficiency. If we're going to try to find a silver lining for COVID, I do think that it has opened everyone's eyes to healthy homes and indoor air quality, and I think that category is really going to benefit, as well as, of course, remote working, and then home health care, telemedicine, etc. When we ask our readers how they're changing their behaviors, they're cooking more, they're working from home, they are paying attention to their indoor air quality, they're cleaning more, they're spending more time outdoors, and they're exercising more. So I think that COVID will be a time when it kind of forces us, for better or for worse, to adopt some healthier and better habits. But, again, probably the biggest opportunity for the building industry stemming from COVID is health and wellness, because, COVID has unveiled the ugly reality that viruses and other contaminants are transferable via air. And it has also expedited the adoption of technology across all sectors of our economy. And this really comes into play with respect to connected living and smart home technologies. And in the indoor air quality space, that's really whole home filters, filtration systems like the one that Carrier recently released that I mentioned that gets rid of 98% of COVID particles. It also involves proactive indoor air quality systems that have monitors on the front end, and then connect with vent fans and range hoods and HVAC systems when they sense toxins and CO2 and VOCs and dust and humidity to monitor and manage indoor air quality. So I think what we are seeing is that the definition of healthy home is changing. It's not just IAQ, but it does include things like sanctuary spaces and non-toxic antimicrobial surfaces, and really just making better, healthier lifestyle decisions. Indoor air quality, though, again, can't be denied. It's really shifted from a nice to have to a must have. In fact, over 90% of our readers now tell us that it's extremely important or very important, and that it's actually as important as location when making home buying decisions. And that's new. That's really never happened before. We're also seeing ventilation as a part of indoor air quality surge with a lot of innovative technologies, not just fresh air exchange, but activated carbon filters that strip out ozone, radon monitoring, various different types of air filtration and purification technologies, lots of advances. We're seeing interesting technologies emerging, like wearable indoor air quality sensors with filtration systems, purification systems that are integrated into lamps or picture frames or kind of multi-use products. So lots of interesting things on that front. And then what we're also seeing is historically, there's kind of a term, a phrase in the building industry that in the HVAC equation, V was always the missing link. But what we're seeing is that P is the new V, and unless you're in the industry, you won't get this. As my mother very clearly told me, she was like, I don't even know what that means, when she proofed this PowerPoint for me. So thank you, Mom. But basically what it means is that, ventilation has, historically kind of been ignored, right? Fresh air exchange, it's paramount for building performance, building science, indoor air quality. But now we're finding that just having that V is not enough. We've got to have the purification and the filtration pieces as well. I mentioned outdoor living and a huge uptick in outdoor living trends, or alfresco living. And I actually got that term from our friends at TimberTech when I was interviewing them recently about advances in their company. And that's where I learned more about their plastics recycling program, where they're taking just a spectrum of different types of plastics, and namely post-consumer recycled plastics and other types of plastics, and recycling those into composite decking materials. Again, I really encourage you to check out their website and look at their recycling program. It's really just a fine program, one of the best in the industries. But in talking with them, they really corroborated a lot of the trends that we were looking at and watching, which is things like deck expansions and replacements. There's a lot of aging wood decks right now that are being replaced by composites because of the durability and the low maintenance and the resiliency and the sustainability aspects. Lots of uptick in what we're calling transition spaces. So kind of covered outdoor spaces that are a transition between the inside and the outside, meaning just the uncovered yards and lawns and gardens. Lots of uptick in outdoor kitchens and entertainment systems. Huge growth in edible gardens, and this goes back to that kind of self-sufficiency and resiliency piece, where people want to be growing their own food right now. And then we're also seeing, not just in kind of single-family and multifamily homes, but high-rise applications, rooftop gardens, balconies, terraces, where folks in denser packed urban areas are kind of bringing, we'll say, the outdoors as inside as they can, meaning growing foods in pots on decks and things like that. And then again, our friends at AZAC mentioned that what they're seeing is that the contractor projects, the projects that contractors get involved with. They're bigger, they're more elaborate, multi-level, they incorporate covered spaces and cabanas. But the DIY projects, they're a little bit smaller and more modest, but they're getting very unique in terms of playing with colors and patterns and ways to divide even smaller spaces more creatively. Of course, we're seeing a huge transformation of work as well with the uptick in remote working. What I'll say here is that about 3/4, about 75%, actually about 78% of folks that we survey across building professional and consumer audiences say that they never want to go back to an office full time. And frankly, the business executives that are making decisions don't want their people to return full time because they're saving a lot of money by downsizing spaces. So I think that there's going to be a big turnover in commercial spaces and office park spaces where a lot of these companies get flexible. We're already starting to see this with a lot of the big tech companies like Facebook and Twitter and Google and Microsoft who are saying, hey, people, employees, you don't really, there's some companies, I believe it was Facebook, who said, you guys don't ever have to come back to the office. Actually, no, I think that was Twitter. But they're basically saying, look, you can work remotely if you want, just let us know. They're setting up smaller pods where if people do want, some interaction with their colleagues, they can get together in smaller pods or co-working spaces, satellite offices in different areas that allow their people to work for the most part from home, but then again, come in for meetings where they don't have to come all the way into a central office that might have a much longer commute. Frankly, they want their people working and not commuting, and that's good for everyone, especially the planet. So I think we're going to see a lot of shift. And then I believe, and I've mentioned this before in other presentations, that a lot of the space that's being used right now for offices and commercial space is going to transition to warehouse space because of the huge uptick in online purchasing and warehousing space. But also, I think we have a really innovative opportunity to turn that space into affordable housing units to address the massive affordable housing issue that we have here in this country. But as people are working more from home, they're reimagining the home office. These offices aren't necessarily bigger, but they're becoming more thoughtful. So homeowners and then building professionals in conjunction with homeowners, whether they're building and designing new homes or retrofitting existing homes, are looking, they're asking questions about how are you going to use this office? Where can we place it so that it's not in a Wi-Fi dead space? How can we bring in natural light to increase productivity? How can we bring in fresh air? How can we declutter the space? Again, for optimized efficiency and productivity. Of course, with remote working, that also increases our need for connectivity. So we're seeing a huge uptick, certainly in bandwidth and connectivity technologies, as well as just general connected living. We're seeing a lot of people transition from what we call a mindless home to a very mindful home where they have smart home technologies integrated into all aspects of their lives. Big uptick in a wide spectrum of connected living products from security cameras, smart thermostats, indoor air quality sensors, water and leak detection, water management and leak detection systems. I mentioned, of course, aging in place functionality for older adults. Water management is another issue. I see I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to run through some of these last slides. Water is a huge issue in our world. It is the most important issue of our moment, actually. We've kind of solved for energy. We're solving for healthy homes and indoor air quality. But water, we still need to pay attention to, because particularly in the building industry, if there's no water, there's no permits, right? And we're seeing across the country, but particularly here in my home state along the Front Range in Colorado, water tap fees have grown by about 400% along the Front Range. And we've seen several communities, including one we were planning on participating in, get canceled because the water tap fees were too high, and it wouldn't allow us to move forward with the community in a way that would have been cost effective. So we're seeing a lot of innovations in water related technologies, namely leak detection and water monitoring technologies, as well as gray water systems. Resilient building is another one, given the fact that the whole western part of our country is on fire and the eastern part is deluged by superstorms and flooding, really growing interest in making homes more resilient and durable and can withstand, the fury of Mother Nature. I mentioned millennials. Millennials and older Gen Zs have seized the influencer position this year in the housing market. So they're spending more money on buying homes and retrofitting homes than any other audience. They are flooding the market. They're hungry for financial independence. And interestingly, they're pursuing some different ownership models, right? So they're buying a property and renting some of it out. They're pooling funds with friends and family if they have to put money down for down payments. They are investing in properties that they can afford rather than buying move-in ready homes, which is definitely a different trend. It's a little bit of a pivot, a bit out of necessity, I believe. These are generally dual income, college educated couples that either are planning to start families or have young kids. They want, low cost of home ownership, compact floor plans. Healthy and smart are baselines. They also, want yards and access to nature and other connected living benefits and other sustainability benefits. They think that solar is a bragging right. They want homes that net meter. Again, smart is cool. Working from home, remote work, like a lot of these folks have actually worked remotely for part or all of their careers. So this is not a huge sea change for them. But one thing I do want to note is that while this audience segment is actively buying and retrofitting homes, their knowledge base is fairly nascent. So there's a big opportunity to really educate them on, what they should be looking for, what they should be asking from their contractors and their builders and their realtors and their lenders. Green Builder Media is really going to be focusing on that in 2021 and beyond. But I think that there's a big opportunity to really educate these folks. The good news for the environment is that this is a very values-based and purpose-driven group. They believe in sustainability. Things that they like to talk about online are things like planting gardens, creating a net zero budget, organic vegan cooking, engaging in the sharing economy. With that said, I always like to, while I like to talk about millennials, I say don't count the boomers out because this is, a very large group audience segment. They've got lots of money and they're investing in their homes actively because they want to stay in them. So the profile of active adults is changing. Instead of retiring, they may be starting a second or third career, a second or third marriage, and they're definitely more active today than ever before and looking for a distinct set of amenities and benefits in homes. So I know I'm over time here, but just to kind of sum up, I think that we can't have a conversation about the state of the building industry without recognizing what's happening on a global scale with respect to sustainability. Global leaders are committing to net zero emissions, electrification. A European Commission just announced that they'll reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030 at the latest. China, India, Japan, Scandinavia, all of these areas are really making bold commitments. The U.S. is lagging behind in terms of our national commitments, although states and cities have certainly stepped up. I do believe that the new administration will put climate action at the forefront of its agenda to promote the transition to a clean energy economy, to facilitate net zero emissions, to enhance the resiliency of our buildings and infrastructure, to fine polluters, and as much as anything, to really protect frontline communities, because climate action is certainly about emissions, but it's also about social equality. And I think we've really learned that over the course of the past year or so, as we've seen that COVID's hitting, lower income minority communities harder. And it just seems like, we keep, putting salt on the wound there in terms of these frontline minority communities. And it's up to us to really step up to incorporate equality into this conversation. Fortunately, homeowners are really in line with this global shift that's happening. They are becoming more discerning. They're moving away, as I mentioned several times, from that lowest price per square foot metric to something that really values quality and sustainability. And so we're in a moment of a quantum shift, I believe, in the building industry. And there's a lot of opportunity to kind of leapfrog the way we've been doing things into, what we're calling the next generation of homes, designing and building and operating the next generation of homes. And I think demand is there, interest is there on behalf of the consumer. I think there is still some education to be done. That's the onus of those of us in the building industry, in media, in manufacturing, in various different, building professional areas. But I think that certainly the opportunity is there. I think what my real question is, and this is my last slide, I promise, which is, light is appearing. I think we're all breathing a little better. I know I'm sleeping better at night with, the Pfizer vaccine and soon, hopefully, the Moderna vaccine, being distributed into the market. But while I think people have started making better and healthier personal habits, decisions, and adopted healthier habits, it's not enough in terms of, a sustainability conversation. And the real reality is that we're actually moving further away from our climate goals. The UN just put out a report that we're on a trajectory to increase fossil fuel production on a global scale by about 2%, and that's a really far cry. That's a long way from the 6% decrease that we need to meet our climate agreement, our Paris Agreement climate goals. And even Biden's newly appointed climate envoy, John Kerry, said that even if we were to hit the Paris Agreement goals, that's not enough. We need to do better. We need to really ramp up our goals, our objectives, and our actions and our activity and our solutions to decrease the threat multiplier that we're seeing in the climate in order to create a stable ecosystem, because we've thrown our environment out of whack. This threat multiplier is making, fire seasons more intense and year-round, and superstorms more frequent and intense. And in order to have any chance of mitigating that, we have to be really aggressive. And that's going to take a lot of political will. It's going to take a lot of personal will. It's going to take all of us to marshal the human resource, the financial capital, the political courage to create a system that not only is sustainable, but is also financially vibrant and climate safe and equitable. I asked the question, are we too little, too late? But at the end of the day, I always try to get peace and love into my presentation. So I'll end there by saying, because I believe in peace and love, I believe in all of you on this call, all of us within this industry and beyond, I think that we can get there. So with that, I will open it up to questions. I apologize for going a little bit over. And finally, I want to thank again Carrier and TimberTech for being so generous in general with us, but particularly for underwriting this webinar. And thanks all of you for your time today. So Mike, let's we'll do just a couple of questions and we'll go from there. If by the way, if you have other questions that either we don't get to or you don't really want to ask, my email address is on there, and feel free to shoot me a note. I don't always pick up the phone, so don't call. That won't be the best way to get me, but if you shoot me an email, I'll be sure to respond.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much. We do have a couple questions. The first one I'm going to get to is from Cliff. He wanted to know, how are you seeing the MEP systems interfacing with modular and prefab buildings?
So I think that it's a good question. I think that, and just so people know, MEP is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. So it's a little bit of a nuanced question because there's not really any one answer. Because the truth is that it depends on what modular and prefab systems you are looking at. If you're looking at something like the Green Builder branded version of a Devel home that we're coming out with, we're going with full high performance, all electric. You know, everything is, you know, we're going to actually do radiant heat. We're going to do, you know, just high performance optimized, you know, balanced electrical systems with, you know, load management systems that hook into the solar system. We'll have battery storage, you know, et cetera. We'll use, you know, PEX piping and plumbing manifold systems. So, you know, I think it ranges from the types of systems and integrations that are going to be higher cost, but also going to be higher performance, all the way down to, you know, we are seeing some modular options out there for more affordable housing, student housing, you know, other types of applications that really scale those offerings back and have very baseline applications. In fact, I was talking with a friend of mine who has put a consortium together of different modular and prefab manufacturers that, and he basically, you know, I was asking him what he was doing from a high performance and sustainability standpoint, and he was like, you know, we're just meeting code. Like, he's like, don't even, you know, try to talk with us right now because, you know, we're trying to hit a certain price point and at certain applications, and, you know, we're just above code. I mean, we're just meeting code, basically. We're just barely legal, right? So I think that there's a wide spectrum with respect to the MEP applications. And then in terms of panelized wall systems, again, there we are seeing some systems where they have, you know, plumbing and electrical integrated into the panelized systems, or others that maybe just have, you know, more basic structural and building envelope elements without, you know, the plumbing. So I apologize, I'm not trying to be obtuse, but the real answer is that there's a very wide spectrum of applications, and you know, you can find super high performance, more expensive options, or scaled back versions. One of the things that I say with respect to panelization, though, is, you know, right now, you know, I think builders, you know, I think there's kind of enough emerging options that they can really make a choice. You know, if they want more integrated panelized wall systems that include, you know, mechanical and plumbing and electrical, or they can go with a more basic system. So hopefully I answered your question. Sorry, I couldn't be more specific.
Sarah, I had a question for you in regards to the net zero portion of your presentation. Is there any data tracking on the construction of net zero homes on previously undeveloped land versus infill construction?
Mike, great question, and I will have to check with you. I suspect that someone at Team Zero might know that, or EBA Team Zero, I should say now. I don't know the answer to that, but if that's, you know, if you want to shoot me an email, and I can see if I can track that down. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. And I did want to share a little bit of information to enhance the presentation, if you're okay with that, Sarah.
Please.
it seems that there is a chasm that has started, and it may be widening. I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out in 2021. But it seems there is a little bit of a disparity between the 2021 IECC, or the model code, and municipalities' policies. Because as you've pointed out here, a lot of places are starting to go to electrification, natural gas bans, EV readiness, that sort of thing. And those two proposals were considered, out of scope, or they were rejected on appeal in the most recent model code. And so, as the 2021 IECC rolls out across the land in 2021 and 2022 and beyond, that model code isn't going to have those provisions in there. And you'll find that municipalities seem to be moving in a faster pace to incorporate those types of policies. So there may be a widening gap between the model code and what ends up getting adopted in certain areas. And I think the other thing to point out quickly for your audience, and this is a developing story, is there is a movement afoot within the ICC and its processes to change from an energy code to an energy standard. And while it would still be called the IECC, the proposal right now is to transition it to a standard which would look more like the ASHRAE standard. And it's really uncertain right now as to all the details and logistics behind that and how that may or may not manifest itself. And so that's something that is, being discussed. It has been discussed in meetings since October and is being discussed, I believe, this week, from what my sources are telling me. And I don't know when a final resolution or decision will come down from the ICC board, but this is something that is emerging, and it's emerging quickly because there are a lot of ICC members out there, code officials, who are completely unaware this is even happening. And so it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for sharing that. You're one of our in-house resident code experts, and I know I always learn from you whenever you open your mouth and talk about codes. And I'm really grateful that you have, agreed to be a part of the Housing 2.0 program that we're launching, because, understanding, how to design and build the next generation of homes doesn't just, start and stop with a conversation and understanding, design and building science and, green product and construction approaches. It really, needs to incorporate a discussion about codes and where they're heading, and how to not just meet them, but to really exceed them, and to really help continue to raise the bar. I know, unfortunately, there's a lot of folks in our industry that kind of fight against the advances of codes, but happy to see that that tide is turning a bit, and we're starting to see more and more interest in adopting these advanced codes, frankly, because, and actually I'll just, share a little caveat of my own, which is here in our local jurisdiction, we were actually on the 2012 codes, and actually Ron Jones, our president, my co-founder, who Mike mentioned earlier, is he helped, he served on an ad hoc committee, and we decided to adopt the 2018 codes because the difference, we found that, the difference in performance, and then frankly, the ROI, there was a difference, I think, for our climate zone. We looked at some DOE research, and it showed that while there was going to be about an increase in cost of about $40 between the 2015 and 2018 code for higher performance windows, it was $46. The annual payback in energy efficiency savings was $40 a year. So after about 1.2 years, the homeowner was actually making money with that update, the increased code. And we were able to decrease our insurance expense. And so, I think a lot of these factors are converging to drive awareness and, frankly, a more logical decision-making process about codes than the historical pushback, which was, oh, this is going to impact affordability, because I think that the whole concept of affordability is changing. I very purposefully mentioned several times that we are seeing early adopter and first mover consumers stepping away from just looking at lowest upfront cost or lowest price per square foot when making home buying decisions, because I think it's really important just to note that the whole, kind of metric and valuation of housing is changing. And, I think that needs to be an integrated and comprehensive conversation that, we all have together to, include homeowners, home buyers, and then all of the different stakeholders, whether that's builders, designers, remodelers, lenders, realtors, insurers. I think it has to be, code officials, et cetera. I think it has to be a comprehensive program. I think, historically, some of the stakeholders in kind of the home, the residential, well, in the building industry in general, you have one group that speaks Spanish, one that speaks Portuguese, and one that speaks Italian, so they may be able to, pick up a few words here and there, but, they haven't really had that integrated conversation, and I see that happening more and more. Certainly, more now today than when we started Green Builder Media 16 years ago, when, we were building bridges everywhere and trying to get people to communicate and, just trying to throw out words that people could use so that they could actually understand one another. I think the conversation about green building, sustainability, the cost effectiveness of having a green home, the health and wellness benefits, the performance benefits, the environmental benefits, all these things, the conversation has evolved so much. And I think it's kind of, hockey stick like growth where, we were here, in the bottom of the flat mesa portion of the hockey stick for a long time. But unfortunately, kind of like greenhouse gas emissions, we're now in this phase where we're ramping up quickly.
Well, I don't see any other questions, Sarah, so I want to thank you for your time, your insights, the COGNITIONSmart data, and the wonderful conversation we had today. Thank you, Sarah.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being our moderator and always being so thoughtful in your approach. Also, thank you again to Mary Kessner, our wizard behind the curtains, production manager. And thanks to all of you for your time today. Really appreciate it. And please don't hesitate to shoot me an email if you have any further questions. So with that.
And we want to say, we want to say thank you to Carrier. We want to say thank you to TimberTech for their generous sponsorships of this webinar. That wraps up the webinar series for 2020. We hope you have enjoyed this year's slate of 20+ webinars as much as we've enjoyed bringing them to you. You can be sure we'll be back in 2021 with a cornucopia of webinars for your listening and viewing pleasure. The vaccine isn't too far off, but until then, please continue to stay vigilant, stay healthy, and enjoy the upcoming holiday season safely. Have a happy New Year, everyone.